I just started the recording.
Okay. Donna, I just got a text from Dave Romano saying that he's on, but I'm not sure. Are you going to be able to give him?
Oh yeah, I see him. Okay, there we go. I promoted him to panelist.
Okay.
Thank you, Donna.
You're welcome.
Oh, there I am. Good. So I turned my video on. So I was just, Steve, I could see you, but I was like, Steve. I was trying to get a hold of. Hi, Donna. Thanks.
You popped up in the audience rather than a panelist.
That's what I figured, and that's why I texted Steve, and I wanted to make sure you noticed me in there. So I'm a little dark, but I think we'll be okay.
I was telling him the only little glitch I see is when I share my screen, I don't see the attendees anymore. So when it comes to question time, I may have to stop sharing the screen to see the raised hands.
Okay. Well, we respect their time. So if you guys want to kind of jump in, we'll let them know it's 6 o'clock, and you can kind of let them know that we're going to get started, and then I'll kind of give a little overview and then turn it over to Steve, and then kind of a little close, and then we kind of open up for questions.
Okay, sounds good. We are live. So they did hear all that.
Oh, good.
And so, it's on tape. We're recording.
Good.
So welcome to this community meeting for the Riverwalk project. We have Dave Romano with us, who's a project proponent and will give us an overview of the project. We also have Steve McMurtry, who's our consultant that's working on the EIR. And Steve is available to speak, and we're all here to answer questions for you as well. So take it away, Dave.
Thank you, Donna. Thank you so much. And so welcome everybody who's on. My name's Dave Romano. I'm a kind of a local land use planner. I assist people with development of projects through the city. I've been asked to participate in the Riverwalk project. It's a great pleasure. I've met the landowners, other advocates, and I think they're really a good group and really want to do something nice for the city. As part of this, we usually reach out to neighborhood groups. This is a project applicant meeting. This isn't a city meeting. And so for the purpose of this meeting, we've invited the Park Ridge neighbors specifically. Park Ridge is a very high quality development in the city of Riverbank, and this project abuts immediately adjacent to it on the west side. Park Ridge is an unincorporated county development. Other areas to the east and south of Park Ridge are in the city of Riverbank, but Park Ridge is not. And so their issues, concerns might be unique to Park Ridge. If you lived on Coffee Road, your issues would be different, or your concerns might be different. But Park Ridge, as a unique neighborhood with unique issues and concerns, we felt like really deserved some kind of direct attention. And so we invited the Park Ridge residents to join us through this Zoom meeting. It would certainly always be my preference to do these person to person. I think face to face is the best way to do them, and we contemplated that, but I know that not everybody yet is quite as comfortable being out, and doing a meeting that's half online and half person in person, I think could, face to face could just be a little challenging. And so we made a decision for this initial meeting to do it through Zoom, so it's easy for everybody to participate, to listen to our comments about the project, and to attend. And so that's why we've chosen this format. As things continue to open up and meetings become more open, there'll be more opportunity for us to meet face to face and to talk about this. Participating with us as well as Steve McMurtry. Steve's a planner with De Novo Planning and Design. They're a Valley company. They've done a lot of development in the Valley. They do both specific plans and EIRs, and they're participating with this project, bringing kind of their Valley sensibilities. and are helping us to prepare it, put it together, and walk it kind of through the city process. There has been an application filed with the city. That's an initial overview of the project. A project description has been prepared and that was circulated. There has been a notice of preparation prepared for an EIR. There will be an EIR prepared on the project that will cover each and every item that you could cover under your environmental review. So rather than scoping out any specific issues, that EIR on this project will analyze all of those issues. We think that's helpful for the neighbors to know. So with that done, the purpose of this meeting is just to give you a brief overview of the project, to make sure that you're familiar with what's going on to the west of you. And then at the end of that, we can listen to questions or comments that you may have. If we have answers, we'll try to answer them on the spot. If we don't have answers, we can take notes and try to get those answers for you. Again, these are development team presentation, development team responses, and comments. The city has its own process that it will go through. It will analyze it how it would typically analyze any other project. And so there will be a city process, but we wanted you to have a chance to meet us, the development team, to converse with us a little bit and to see if you had any specific questions maybe that we hadn't thought about or were important for us to know. So with that in the way of background, I know Steve has a brief PowerPoint that can just kind of walk you through some of the salient points of the project. It's not overwhelming. We didn't want to, take an hour of your time. We wanted to make sure that you got a nice overview of the project, that you knew what we were proposing. And then as it moves through the process, more information will come available that you can either get from Donna or possibly from us if we reach out to you again. So that's it. So Donna, can you kind of turn it over to Steve and let him walk them through the project?
Okay, Steve, you want your PowerPoint up?
Yep. Okay. So good evening. My name is Steve McMurtry. I'm a principal planner with De Novo Planning Group. Our firm, as Dave mentioned, we were retained by the developer group to serve as the project planner for the project. And ultimately, we're responsible for preparing a variety of land use planning documents, design documents, and also environmental documents for the project. Next slide, please. So for some of you, you might have attended the NOP scoping meeting a few weeks ago. There's a little bit of information here that's similar. That meeting was really focused a little bit more on the environmental scope of the project and the process in terms of CEQA. What we wanted to do today was a little bit more sort of focus on what the project is. It's sort of a twofold purpose. First, to disseminate some information to you about what the project is, amenities, allow you to ask questions about what we envision for the project, and also for us to be able to receive any input or comments back from you. Like Dave said, things that we might not have thought about, things that we should consider. So next slide, please. So wanted to start with the boundary. Generally, the project is all the land that's north of Patterson Road, east of McHenry Avenue. The site is approximately 2 miles from downtown. And as Dave mentioned, it's located immediately west of Park Ridge neighborhood. I have another slide here in a few minutes where we'll talk about sort of that boundary and we'll kind of zero in on that boundary and what we envision in terms of lotting for that area. Next slide, please. So in 2009, the city adopted their general plan. So the general plan as it stands now is about 12 years old. And in that general plan, the city created a variety of land uses for the specific plan area. As you can see in this illustration, about half, a little bit more than half of the specific plan area is designed with a mix of low, medium, and high density residential. There's mixed use, there's parks and open space, there's a variety of land uses. There is a portion of the specific plan area that's designated as reserve, and that area is an area that the city has not necessarily identified land uses, but has identified it for a future land use planning process. And it sort of comes to fruition when that developer or the underlying property owner decides that they do want to develop that property. They bring it into a specific plan process. So that was 12 years ago. What the developer has done is they assembled a team of planners and engineers to take a look at this and to try to take the land uses that are laid out here and turn it into a land use pattern that really would fit to the topography of the land and to the desire of and sort of the vision of the developer for this community. Next slide, please. So I wanted to go over a couple of notable boundaries before we go into really the land use design. First and foremost, the red boundary is illustrated as the project area. And so what this is a 1,522 acre area. It's important to note, though, that not all of that area is planned for development or annexation. Only the specific plan area is planned for development. And the specific plan area is the area that's noted in the white crosshatch. That area is 933 acres, and that's what's planned for development. Also within that specific plan area, there's a boundary that's denoted by the black outline, and that's referred to as the Berg Hill property. That property is a 772 acre property. It's controlled by the applicant, and that largely makes up what we'll talk a little bit more detail about here in a minute is the active adult community. Active adult community is an age-restricted type of development, generally thought of as a 55+ community. If you've ever been to this part of Riverbank 2, you might note that the Berg Hill property is generally the area that's the lower elevation area. There's sort of a low and an upper elevation area or a terraced area. So those are some notable boundaries as we kind of walk through the design here in just a minute. So next slide, please. So as I mentioned earlier, the project applicant first assembled a design team approximately a year ago. The team consists of a variety of engineers, civil, transportation, noise engineers. There's urban designers, land use planners, a variety of environmental experts. Once the team was assembled, the project applicant laid out their vision for developing the community. And to achieve that vision, the project applicant established 7 goals for the team that would ultimately lead the team toward achieving that vision. And so what I've laid out here in this slide is those 7 goals that ultimately were the inspiration for the team to develop the specific plan design. So I'm going to go through and just read each one of these. I think that they're important. Goal number 1 was to develop a mix of residential housing products to accommodate a variety of desires in the market. Goal 2 was prioritize the age-restricted development as a vibrant community with diverse housing types and densities, allowing residents to age in place. Goal 3 is to develop a community core area that serves as a central community gathering place for social interaction, recreation, retail, services, and living space. Goal 4 is to promote health and wellness through extensive pedestrian and bicycle trails, outdoor recreation areas, and opportunities for social interaction. Goal 5 is respect natural resources, the Stanislaus River in particular, the terrain, and the character of the land by designing a residential community that highlights the scenic views of the plan area. Goal 6 is achieve a safe and efficient circulation system for all users and modes of transportation. And Goal 7 is highlight village identity while promoting community amenities. So these were the overarching project objectives and goals that really we use to strive to come up with a plan that meets the vision that the developer laid out for us. Next slide, please. So this slide illustrates the land use patterns for the specific plan. Again, it's important to note that the specific plan is a 993 acre area. It's it's sort of a plan area within the larger project area, which we've referred to as the 1,500 acre area. So only the 993 acres is proposed for development. There's really a mix of uses. So first, within the residential categories, there's low, medium, and high density residential. The lotting patterns that are shown here would allow for, we're estimating 2,432 residential units, and these are of varying densities and products. So there is a mixed use designation also that predominantly is anticipated to be a commercial type of use. These are mostly located along Patterson Road and McHenry Avenue. They're situated in those locations to really take advantage of the high visibility commercial locations of these locations. But it's also noted that these mixed use designations also allow for residential components, higher density residential components to be built in to those mixed use land uses. There's also two mixed use areas that are more central to the specific plan. So they're not along Patterson or McHenry, they're more central to the specific plan. And they're in an area that we've referred to as the community core. And so in the community core, the idea is to create an area, a central gathering place for people. And so we've anchored the community core with a clubhouse. If you can have ever been to a 55 plus active adult community, they generally have a clubhouse community that's going to have types of amenities such as gyms and conference rooms inside, possibly food services inside, outdoor. They're going to have various recreational amenities. It might be pools. There could be community gardening areas, tennis courts, bocce ball venues. There's a variety of venues and amenities that can be created within that clubhouse environment. Attached to the clubhouse, we envision another mixed use component that's a little bit more of a retail, kind of small retail, maybe office. There might be coffee shop, deli, small retail environment that takes advantage of this sort of this higher density population in this community core area. Also in the community core across the street on sort of the southwestern side of the street is an area that would be high density residential. And the idea there is because it's active adult and an age in place type of community, that use could be anything from senior housing, senior apartments, to assisted living, or even a memory care type of facility. And what it does is as people age in place and want to move into that type of use, you're placing these people right next to the sort of the community gathering area where a lot of the amenities and the social activities occur for this community. So we're trying to create a little bit more of a population density in that community core area. And as you move out from there sort of concentrically, there is lower and lower density. First moving out sort of to the west and to the north, you see some medium density housing. There's a variety of product types that would be anticipated in there, but it's generally going to be smaller homes, townhomes, possibly on smaller lots. As you move away from that, you start to get into a lower density residential, which is going to be more along the lines of your traditional single family detached homes. There can be a mix of types of products, possibly some townhomes in those. There's some flexibility in the design that's built into the specific plan. But the lotting, as it shows now, it lays out sort of your more traditional single family detached. So that in the Berg Hill property is the active adult. As you move out of the Berg Hill property, there's Village A and B and some of the areas on sort of the upper terrace. And those areas are not age restrictive. They're not part of the active adult community, and they would have a lot more flexibility to design at your traditional market, age non-restricted type of development. A couple other amenities I wanted to note. There is an extensive amount of park and open space that's built into this project. Along the Stanislaus River, as you recall, one of the goals was to try to preserve sort of the natural habitats and open space. for the area. So we created a river park. And what it is a sort of a passive recreational opportunity. It's not going to have intensive uses. It might have some seating areas, but built into the river park is a river trail. And the river trail is a loop trail system, almost 5 miles long, that loops around the entire active adult community. It is incorporated into the river park, but it also loops around the rest of the boundary of the community, of the active adult community. And it does provide, every village within the active adult community provides access to that Riverwalk trail. Also within each of the neighborhoods, we tried to create a smaller park that is central to each one of the neighborhoods. So each neighborhood has their own parks. There's access to trail systems. There's visible open space within each of the communities. So a variety of amenities that we tried to incorporate into the overall design of the project. One other important component that's a little bit unique to active adult type of communities is we tried to design this project to accommodate neighborhood electric vehicles. And a neighborhood electric vehicle type of community is one where you would envision golf carts for people to travel from their residence to the community core area, to the gym at the clubhouse or the community park, or maybe to go down to the coffee shop or deli down in the community core area. And there's a couple of things for that, or with that. For one, it reduces greenhouse gas emissions, air quality impacts, a lot of the things that sort of pollution that comes with driving an automobile. It also reduces congestion. Neighborhood electric vehicles are a lot smaller. They're easier to park. They require less space. And they're desired by people that want to live in a 55+ community. So we've designed the street layout system, the speed limits, a variety of things that allow for accommodation of a neighborhood electric vehicle type of system. Lastly, I wanted to talk a little bit about age in place. It's a concept that's developed by the American Planning Association, and it's sort of the guiding principles from that are something that we used in the design of this. As I mentioned, there's sort of this concentric design where the lower density is on the outside, and as you move towards the community core, you get into a higher density. And the idea is that somebody that's 55+, kids moved out of the house, they're empty nesters, but they might not want to go into a smaller product. They might want more of a traditional single family detached home that they're used to. So they would move into Village D or Village C into a single family detached. But as that person starts to age, they like the community, they want to stay in the community, but they really don't want the size of house, the size of the lot, all the maintenance that goes with it. So they want to move into a smaller product. And as they do that, they move into a medium density type of housing, and it brings them a little bit closer to that community core, the social gathering places that are associated with that. And it allows them to have that product that they desire, which is lower maintenance. And then as they age even more, you might get to a point where you truly need some assistance in your living, and you can move into a senior housing, assisted living, memory care type of facility, which would be located within the community core portion of the project. So this design follows the American Planning Association's guiding principles for age in place communities. And that's one of the overall themes with the design that's laid out here. The last thing I want to talk to you about on this map is there is a large sort of light yellow area that is designated as reserve, that is to the west of the specific plan area and just to the east of McHenry Avenue. What this area is, it is not planned for development. It's part of the overall project area, but it's not planned for development. Reserve, as I mentioned earlier, is a designation the general plan has for areas that could be developed at some point in the future if the property owners desire to do so. They would have to initiate a design process and applications with the city. but it's not necessarily ripe for development and long-range planning at this point. So that area is entirely designated as reserve as part of this project. No development proposed there at this point. Next slide, please. So this is the slide I wanted to zoom in on the boundary of the specific plan and the Park Ridge development. Several things as we looked at the Park Ridge development and the lotting scheme that abutted the specific plan, we wanted to be sensitive to what exists, and there was really three things that we wanted to incorporate. First, we wanted to make sure that we aligned the lots within the specific plan to the lots within the Park Ridge development. We wanted to make sure that they were the similar size, and that we wanted to make sure also that each Park Ridge resident had just one neighbor adjacent to them. Next slide, please. And so lastly, I wanted to just wrap up here with what some of the amenities might look like for the development. As I mentioned, it's kind of the focal point of the project, or sort of the community core area within the active adult community, is the clubhouse. So the clubhouse, these are a couple illustrations that show what a clubhouse, some typical clubhouses within active adult communities throughout California look like. They're going to, represent a structure that's going to have gyms, a variety of meeting rooms, offices possibly, outdoor recreational areas. The neighborhood electric vehicle, it's something unique to active adult 55 plus communities. It's achievable, and I think it's desired by people that would want to live within this community. The Riverwalk Trail is an important amenity, I think, for maintaining two things. Adding pedestrian and bicycle facilities within a community is desired by just about every community in California, but it also, especially in an active adult community, you want to have amenities that are accessible by people to make sure that they do maintain activity. The community core area, it's important to have a place as people age where they can go, they can have social interactions, they can have both living opportunities in the high density residential, but also the recreational with the clubhouse attached with some retail, so that they can spend some time each day in that community core area. And then lastly, one of the goals for the project was to make sure that they maintain parks and open space, in part for the natural, the preservation of some of the natural habitat and the scenic qualities of the area. And we tried to do that by creating the river park, maintaining, intact the riparian system along the Stanislaus River, the natural habitat along the bluff area with some oak trees and some of the natural vegetation there. So there's a variety of natural habitats that would be left intact. And then we tried to incorporate more of your man-made park recreational systems within each of the neighborhoods, including both the pocket parks, but also the community park that's attached to your social gathering place in the community core. So with that, I'll wrap this up with just, there was a lot of thought, a lot of effort that was put in by the urban designers, the engineers, everybody that was involved in coming up with the design. And we're glad that we had the opportunity to share it here with you. Obviously we're looking for, feedback. If you can provide feedback, anything that we haven't considered, we want to definitely take note of that. With that said, I'll pass it back to Dave.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Stephen. Donna, I think I saw a couple of comments on the chats. I'd like to respond to those first. And if you could, on your share screen, if you could go back 2 slides to the specific plan land use summary, because I think that will help me answer the questions. But on one of them, I wanted to respond to, oops, I just opened, please forgive me. I'm trying to get my, one more back, Donna. Thank you, right there. And then on my chat, so from Ballistic Defense Academy asked, would residents have priority for purchasing if they want to downgrade or move to a different area as they age? That is something that I'll talk to the developers about. I would certainly assume they could create, a priority program. One, they could probably create a priority program for people who in Riverbank and want to stay in Riverbank. And secondarily, I would absolutely expect, though, just let me qualify. If I misspeak and I find out I misspeak, I will make sure that the information gets back to you, that it's correct, that it's corrected. I am not as familiar with active adult communities as maybe others, but I would certainly expect the residents would expect, and it would be commonplace that if you buy in that residence and in that area and you want to continue to downsize and move through that you do have some level of priority. So that would make sense. I think it's something that could be created. We'll take a look at that and see if we hear anything different, but that's a great question and something I think that that is, clearly would be expected by the residents in there. I'm moving into here and I want to continue to go through it. Steve, do you have any more to add to that, or?
No, I don't have any.
Okay. Betsy Walton asked a couple of questions. One, she asked what was the minimum age for this adult community. Typically, active adult communities are 55 and over. So that's in the industry, that's what we call active adult. That doesn't mean that you can't set other standards, but that's pretty typical. I'll let Steve correct me if he has any difference.
No, that's correct.
Perfect. And then she asked on villages O, M, N, and L, which was on the next slide, Donna. Those, so everybody can see where O, M, L, and N are. Those are on the far northwest side, kind of over near Hogue Road. Those are currently planned for active adult community. Is that correct, Steve?
That's right.
All right. And then a couple more popped up, and I know Donna will allow those with raised hands to kind of jump in. Steve, gated? Will it be a gated community?
I don't know that decision has been made yet. I don't know that there's been a desire shown either way. I'll say this: most active adult communities that I've been to do not have a gate. Not to say that there wouldn't be one here, though.
And then she also asked, this is Barbara Grandin, with respect to the timeline for construction. There are always three answers to that. There's the developer's desire, which is as soon as humanly possible. There is the real answer, which is, or the kind of midpoint answer, which is there a city process. It takes a while. We'll need to go through a city approval process, an annexation process, an engineering and planning and design process. We'll need to be able to get utilities to the site. So, more realistically, even if we went at the speed of light, it could take 2 or 3 years for us to start moving dirt. And then, how long does it take to develop? Some projects develop very quickly if the market continues to remain robust, if there continues to be a demand for housing in California, which there is, if interest rates continue to be low. Sometimes projects go through a cycle. So, anything from a 10-year to, Village 1 in Modesto was 1,700 acres. It went through 2 or 3 down cycles and takes longer to develop. So the timeline's a little bit difficult to answer specifically, but we can give you a start date, assuming all things remain the same, with a little more certainty than we can give you a finish date. And then Nana asked, has the project been approved? No, the project has just started its approval process. It will go to the Riverbank City Council when the specific plan has been prepared, when the environmental impact report has been prepared and publicly reviewed, when comments have been received and responded to, and then it will have both a city process and an annexation process, and then be annexed. And so it has not yet been approved. And where are these homes getting water from? And and finally, is an extended Coffee Road going to be the traffic flow? Yes, so an extended Coffee Road is the main entrance into the project site. It will come down from Coffee, and then there is a secondary access off of Patterson Road a little bit further to the east, but Coffee Road is kind of the main spine road and access into the site. And then again, Betsy Walton, can reserve areas ever be taken by eminent domain for development? So this is kind of a challenging question because we're all kind of familiar with a case called Kelo from many, many years ago, where supposedly property was taken by eminent domain for a private purpose, and it went all the way to the Supreme Court and was kind of a hotly contested case. But the reality is, in this area, I've not seen eminent domain used for private property purposes. Eminent domain is generally supposed to be for property taken for a public purpose, a widening of a road. Years ago, it would be a dam or a water control project, but not just to give to a developer. In the valley is a strong ag basis. The Board of Supervisors, that property will be out in the county. The Board of Supervisors feel strongly about agriculture, protection of agriculture. And so my guess would be, and the Wood Colony has actually, you've read in the paper, kind of gone through this, where the neighborhood has not wanted their properties to be developed. I think the risk of eminent domain for development is extremely small. If in the future the landowners got together and wanted to do something, they would go through a similar process. But that's kind of my thought on that. Mr. Elliott asks, would line of sight be preserved for Park Ridge residents abutting Village B? Two-story homes be allowed? We haven't looked at that issue. That's a good question. The market changes substantially. You know, right now, one-story homes are in favor again. We've got projects that are building 60 to 70% of the homes one-story. And so we'll ask the landowners, the developers about that and their thoughts about two-story homes versus one-story homes on that adjacent area. We've been very sensitive to that. You know, we're familiar with Park Ridge neighborhood. We're familiar with the River Heights neighborhood. It's a fantastic neighborhood. For all of the reasons you love your neighborhood, we think the people that move into Village B will love Village B. It's intended to be very similar to Park Ridge, high quality homes on large lots. And you know, the only difference is those of you who have an open field over your backyard will now have a neighbor over your backyard. But as Steve said, we've tried to make sure that we matched your property lines and that you were really getting as much as we could provide it like for like. But on the two-story home, I'm not prepared to make a blanket absolutely one way or the other. So we'll take a look at that. And Steve, maybe just take a note, you know, that next time we talk to the group to kind of ask them about that. Moya Simone asks, is there an entrance to the development off of McHenry Avenue north of Hogue Road? There is. That property is owned by the developer. It is a second way in and out and would have an access point to McHenry Avenue. It would be north of Hogue Road and the Hogue Road residence. So there is a proposed access at that location. And so with that, any more discussion on those topics, you can raise your hand. I'm going to let Donna get control of the raised hands and kind of, let us hear if you have any more questions about it. Between Steve and I, we'll do our best to answer those.
Well, actually, Dave, with the PowerPoint still up, I don't see the raised hands on my screen.
You can go ahead and take it off then, please.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank
Yep.
you.
You're a shoe bet.
And I have no raised hands at this time.
Well, I'll just chat for one more minute, see if anybody else wants to pop anything up. Donna manages this from the city of Riverbank's perspective. She is the processor and the planner for the city of Riverbank. Anything that we do on this project gets submitted to Donna. When there are appropriate documents to be posted, they'll be posted. She is a resource. She has an email at City Hall. We received a number of NOP comments from not only public agencies, but from a number of the names I've recognized here. We're aware of all those comments, all of those letters. Steve McMurtry has those, and we'll be able to kind of like review them as the draft EIR is being prepared. One of the good things about doing a draft EIR and EIR that covers every issue under CEQA is it kind of keeps us from missing anything. We've not made a determination that ag land is not important for that, parkland is not important for that, aesthetics are not important. And so Steve's EIR will review each and every one of those letters or issues, regardless of whether we receive a comment on it.
Dave, I have a hand that keeps popping up.
Oh, okay. And I've seen a few more chat comments, so we can address those too.
Okay,
Go ahead.
I'll go ahead and get the hands. This is Annabelle Gammon. Annabelle, you're
Annabelle,
muted.
you're muted.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. I was wondering why you have shown a plan for the houses built abutting the Park Heights homes is planned alike. There's a question here from Luis Uribe. Is this because you are having plans for annexation for the Park Heights neighborhood? Is this the reason for this meeting tonight? Thank you.
So, Annabelle, the question is, does this project propose the annexation of Park Ridge Estates?
Very clearly, that's the question.
Okay. So here is the answer. We don't have an interest in annexing Park Ridge Estates. That would not be our preference. LAFCO will ultimately be faced with the issue of either annexing this property and leaving Park Ridge Estates as an unincorporated area. If the Park Ridge residents, generally speaking, want to remain unincorporated, then certainly we would support that. LAFCO is the ultimate decision maker. But recently in Newman, they went around some property that did not want to be annexed. Would not be out of the ordinary. At the same time, the Park Ridge area does not have city sewer and water. If the Park Ridge residents really felt strongly about joining the city of Riverbank and wanted to be part of that, that would be helpful for us to know, and we can start looking at what that looks like. So I really think at this stage of the process, the Park Ridge Estates area is not something that we have any interest in dragging through a process that they don't want to participate in. At the same time, we don't want to assume that we know what the Park Ridge Estates residents want. So, if you and your neighbors, strongly let Donna know that you don't want to be annexed, that helps us with LAFCO that we already know your desires. If there are a number of people that feel that that's a benefit to them and they let Donna know, then we'll start looking at that. So I think that that's up to you guys to let the city know loud and clear what your desire is. And there may be different desires by different folks and by where you live and by what your history is out there, but hopefully there's kind of some unanimity versus a 50-50 split, where that could be the case. So that's my answer, Annabelle. As far as, as we can't see questions or hands, some of the best farmland in the world. Yep, it is. Not going to say it's not. We're going to look at ag resources as part of the draft EIR. Park Ridge Estates was some of the best ag land in the community. Most of where we developed Modesto and areas, unfortunately. We try to balance that as best we can. The farming community has been great in finding water and developing in areas. We've been growing on farmland instead of reducing it, but it's a very good question. It's a reasonable question, and it will be looked at in the EIR. Is there a time frame to start production? That's kind of the 2 to 3 years. I mean, that's such a hard thing. So if we're able to move through the process and get everything done, I think within 2 to 3 years, you could see some development occurring. But people have told us that interest rates are going to continue to be good for 2 to 3 years, and markets can continue to be good for 2 to 3 years, and things can really change the housing market that are outside of our control. But I think that would be our typical kind of over and under. Anybody else, Donna, with a hand raised?
It looks like Annabelle has a follow-up question.
One more thing, is building in a floodplain an issue? Riverbank went through this with River Cove. I did not work on that project. I know there were questions and concerns there. I've seen in a couple of the NOP letters, there were concerns about people that stated they had seen this area flooded a couple of times. When Maloney's was built, that was supposedly changed, those kind of flood control maps. I'll let Steve kind of address for you, what the EIR will do with respect to this and what kind of analysis there will be. So go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, so the EIR will look at it's one of the main topics of CEQA under the hydrology chapter. There's going to be a review of the 100-year, the 500-year, the 200-year floodplain. It's going to look at historical maps, but also current maps, because as Dave mentioned, they do change as flood control projects and dams have been built up in the foothills. It sort of changed the natural hydrology of the region. So all of that's going to be reflected within the hydrology chapter of the EIR. And then sort of on a more detailed level, there will be a full storm drainage engineering design for the project also. So it's sort of a twofold sort of storm drainage analysis within the EIR. But that analysis has not been done yet, so we don't necessarily have answers to provide right now.
Okay.
So I see. Yep. So I see our engineer weighed in and said that most of the project is not in the floodplain. Some of the ag reserve area is. I can just let everybody know we will absolutely be scrutinizing that. It's a critical issue. The state's actually passed some new regulations a few years back regarding what kind of analysis we have to do. So it will be thoroughly analyzed, and the council will be aware of those issues. But certainly we don't want to build homes that flood. How do we sell homes that are able to flood? So it's a responsibility we have to make sure that they're safe and appropriate for the people.
Okay. Would you like to take Annabelle's follow-up question?
Absolutely.
Okay, you're muted, Annabelle.
So this is a notice of preparation, number 2 meeting, and this is called for River Heights people. And it's a very good report. Thank you very much. But the draft EIR is really still, we talk about development. We're so far from there right now. I think you would agree with me, Mr. McMurtry, I'm sorry. But there are many issues other than the floodplain. There's the safe passages of the Stanislaus River. There's a lot of biological resources there and a lot of disturbance on the riparian growth. So basically, we're not in the breaking ground. I don't think we're in the draft EIR scoping. So I hope you share some of the letters so we know what the other citizens are saying. And also, what this development, is this for the city of Riverbank residents or is this from the Bay Area? Because the prices for these homes and even just the nice village that you described, Mr. Romano, for older people, I don't know whether the city or the even county residents, this will not be a cheap development to buy into, I believe. Anyway, good luck and thank you for taking my questions. Let's work on the EIR. That's most important before we think about breaking ground, I think. Thank you.
Thank you, Annabelle. And then I see Betsy Walton asked one more question about McHenry Avenue traffic is currently a nightmare. How can you mitigate for another 2,400 homes? It's a great question. Well, actually, the traffic will be split, but that doesn't satisfy your concern. So what the EIR will do is it will have a detailed traffic analysis. That traffic analysis will not only do current traffic plus the project, but future growth, cumulative traffic, and analyze what needs to be done on McHenry Avenue, what kind of widening would need to be done. And that'll be analyzed when we review the draft EIR. You'll be able to see what that says. Traffic is always with new projects one of the key and most critical issues because it's what people feel immediately. You know, they feel the increased traffic and they're concerned about it. And so it's usually, Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, other than biology and maybe now GHG, but it used to always be one of the thickest sections in EIR, one of the areas that has a substantial appendix attached to it, a lot of information, gets a lot of comment. So it's a great question. And when the draft EIR comes out, you'll be able to analyze that, respond to that, ask us questions. For price points for homes, there's kind of no way to tell today. Today's market is strong. When I worked on a project in Modesto that we annexed in about 2007, 2008. Homes were up in the high threes, $400,000. We all remember what happened in 2008. They fell, and if my boys were a little bit older, they could have got in their first home at a really good price about 3 or 4 years ago. Unfortunately, they weren't, and now the home prices are very, very high again. They seem to continue to climb. The price of lumber has gone down a little bit just in the past week or so. And so, because we're 2 or 3 years out, in today's market, it would be a range from the very high density to the medium density to the low density. I mean, if we build those homes next to Park Ridge, what homes are selling for in your neighborhood? They're $800,000, $1 million. Honestly, it's shocking, but it's true. It's a good time to be, except you have to buy. The moderate price, typical low density homes right now are selling for about $500,000. Is that going to be the peak? Is it going to go down? It's hard to say. And then as we get smaller, the prices get better. And so all we can do is look what the market is today. If you look at real estate today, it would be competitive. It's market rate. But by the time we reach the market, they could be up 25% or they could be down 15%. We just don't know, but they will be market rate. So.
Okay, I have 2 hands raised. The first one is Lori Wolf. Lori, you're muted. There you go.
So it's interesting, Dave, that you make the comments about where the market rates are at and all these things that affect the sales, because of course that's the whole point to a subdivision, is that you have the sales that you need. But you haven't addressed where the water is going to come from. You haven't addressed how the paving over of farmland and with asphalt and houses is going to affect our community. I'm from Modesto, I'm not from Riverbank, but when this hit my radar, I was kind of like, wow, Riverbank's beautiful. It's small, it's beautiful. It has a community sense that we don't have in Modesto. And so, you're painting a pretty picture about senior living, moving into place, this, that, and everything else. But the bottom line is you're talking about paving over prime farmland, and that disturbs me. That's my comment. That really disturbs me.
And on the farmland question, I appreciate that, Lori. That's the nature of, it's a philosophical question about whether there should be development or not and where it's going to be. That will be through in the process. With respect to the water, the city of Riverbank has had a robust water table. They have a water master plan. That master plan has analyzed wells and tanks and methods for providing water. We become more and more efficient. Active adult communities are, lower water users, but they're not no water users. And so that's a legitimate question. The engineers will do all of their analysis, and there'll be a complete public services section in the EIR that will address issues related to water capacity, sewer capacity, storm drainage, police fire. All of that will be available for you to review. Ms. Walton also asked about if you're widening McHenry, won't you need to take land by eminent domain? The traffic study will let us know if it needs to be widened, does it need to be widened, when would it need to be widened, what those plans are. I know that there are some county plans underway. We'll look at those in the EIR, but that would be a possibility of eminent domain if land can't be acquired for road widening. That would be considered a public purpose. And so that's, following your question about the reserve area, but sometimes for road widening, there's a piece that the cities or counties need to go out and get. So that's a good question. Matt Beneman asks, has the city of Modesto made comments? The city of Modesto responded to the NOP. The city has no, so it's an interesting question. So Matt asks, has the city made comments on their willingness to release their interest in this land? The only person that has interest in this land right now is Mr. Berg and Mr. Berryhill. They are the landowners. This land does not belong to the city of Riverbank. It does not belong to the city of Modesto. The city of Modesto has no claim on it. The city of Riverbank can't. They can lay claim to the fact that it's in their general plan, and they have planned for it to annex to the city, but it is landowners' land. The city of Modesto's general plan does not go out this far. It does not cover this area for development. The city of Riverbank does. And so, as landowners and planners, the city has analyzed the ability to provide water, sewer, storm drain to this land. It's in Riverbank's general plan. It is logically a part of Riverbank, and Modesto can say they don't think Riverbank should grow. That could be their opinion, but they don't have an interest that we would need them to release to proceed forward.
I have a raised hand from a telephone number ending in 3108.
Very well.
So you're muted, who's ever on this line. You'll have to unmute yourself. We can't hear you. Okay, there we go. Hello.
Yes.
You're on.
My name is Ellen. I live downtown Riverbank. My question also has to do with McKinney traffic, because you were looking at traffic only around your development and the McKinney problem. However, the McKinney problem, because it's so bad, a lot of traffic goes down to Santa Fe Road and across the other alternate north, north of the bridge across at Santa Fe Road that comes across the river into downtown Riverbank on First Street. So that's going to impact that and make that much more traffic. And that goes to residential. So my question is, are you going to be analyzing that impact as well?
Thank you, Evelyn. It's Dave Romano. I'll have Steve take a look at the draft DIR and how far afield. So when you do the traffic study, you reach out to the adjacent jurisdictions. You reach out to the city of Riverbank. You reach out to Caltrans. You reach out to the city of Modesto and Stanislaus County, and you try to establish an area that you're reviewing that goes kind of as far as you think your impacts would reasonably go. I'm not sure if it goes as far as First Street, Evelyn, but we'll take a look at that. And then when you get the draft DIR, we'll be able to see kind of how that traffic goes through those intersections as it moves toward downtown Riverbank.
Okay, looks like we have additional questions from both Lori Wolf and Annabelle Gammon. So Lori came in first, so we're going to go ahead and put her through. You're muted, Lori.
Okay, I'm
There you
good.
go.
So, you know, the comment about Modesto versus Riverbank, who actually owns this land, and your comment, Dave, was that, you know, it's up to the landowners to decide what they want to do with their land. And that's a common thing, right? I want to farm, I don't want to farm. I want to put in a nursery, I don't want to put in a nursery. But there are zoning requirements and are things that happen within our county that say, yeah, you know, within reason, you can do what you want to do, but you can't build a Taj Mahal, you can't build a pyramid. And to circumvent the green belts and the zoning plans and farm water recharge and all these other things, it's like, you know, 993 acres of prime farmland with a recharge zone. The landowners can wish to do whatever they want, but how's this going to go through LEFCO? How's this going to go through State Water Resources Control Board? How are you going to, with our water issues these days and stuff, it's like pie in the sky.
And Lori, I appreciate your comments. So I just two quick responses. One is landowners don't get to do whatever they want to do with their land. They get to ask whichever city what they want to do with their land. And ultimately, you're right, there is a decision-making process, and it will go through that. The landowners can make the request. But my response was really to the question that do we need Modesto's permission to proceed with our request? And so the landowner gets to make that request of the city, and that will have the process that it goes through. As to the infrastructure, as I said before, that'll all be analyzed, and ultimately, you know, we can agree or disagree with the reasonableness of the project and whether it makes sense. But you know, it'll all be analyzed. You get a chance to take a look at it. And then did you say you had Annabelle again?
Yes. Here comes Annabelle, and you are muted. There you go.
Yes, David, it's Annabelle again.
Yes.
Did I misunderstand? I believe that the specific plan includes property that is still not, it's in the sphere of, some of it is in the sphere of Riverbank, but this is still unincorporated Stanislaus County. And this is zone A240 and A220. So the city of Riverbank, I think, will have a say on what the zoning is and what you build in there after you're able to annex the properties that you're going to develop in this specific plan. And in that process, you still have to get the landowners. I don't know about Mr. Burke and Mr. Berryhill. I know that there are other landowners there, but they still have to agree on being annexed to Riverbank. Is that correct? This is
Everything you said is
Riverbank.
true. Yes, what you said is true.
Yes.
And then I just saw Mila Amarine, what about traffic impact on westbound River Road? You're traveling to 99 up to Nestlaw and San Joaquin County would be involved in the process as well. Steve, does the traffic analysis across the river?
I don't know. I'd have to look at what the scope of the traffic analysis is. I don't know off the top of my head.
But we'll take a look at that. That's a good question. Well, anyway, that's more detail than we need. But we'll take a look at that so we can get you an answer. And then I said Riverbank had a robust water table, and the effects of the Riverbank water table will be analyzed. Will that analysis include the effects on the River Heights Water District? You have your own well. So River Heights, Steve, has its own well and it operates its own water system. And so the question will be, and it's more a question for Rob Christensen, who's our project engineer, is looking at well locations, cones of influence. And I think Mr. Streeter's question is, you know, you put a big old deep well right next to me and you pump out all groundwater and my groundwater goes down, you know, could it affect my system? So I think we need to look at, you know, well placement. And there's a couple of analyses that have to be done that California requires for water. They have nomenclature that's you know unique to us and won't mean anything to you, but it's like AB 221 or 1221, and there's a Senate bill too, and we have to analyze the water, you know, near term and long term, and the ability of the groundwater table to sustain it. And there's a water supply assessment that's prepared, so kind of all that analysis will be done. So anyway, it's a good question. And then a comment, not a question. Will the project also impact one of the few local outdoor gun ranges? One of our kind of our main project proponents, I spent a lot of time dealing with them, meets with them, has met with them. We've talked to them about some of their needs, and we're very sensitive to them. Not as much from a safety perspective as from a noise perspective, because that gun range does generate noise. And so we've looked at different options with them, not in tune enough to tell you what exactly those are and how they're going to come out. But Steve's noise analysis will address that. We'll address those noise contours. And we don't want to go back and forth, but if you actually look at the map, you'll see that we've created some separation from the gun range for houses to try to keep them out of what would be an unsatisfactory noise area. So we'll continue to kind of look at that, and we're sensitive to it as well. And you're right, that's a great facility, been there a long time, and we're very aware of it.
Okay, we have one hand up, and it's Don. Looks like Gakel. I may be mispronouncing it. Sorry, Don, if I did.
Well, it might be the assessor.
Well, no, you got it right. That's correct. Thank you for pronouncing that correctly. Good evening. As one of the property owners that abuts the development on Park Ridge or South Park Ridge Court, there was a question asked earlier that was very good about line of sight and two-story houses on the in area B. I guess my question is, was there, obviously knowing that the developers want to maximize their profits in the developed area, was there any thought given to some sort of, even if narrow, open space buffer between the existing Park Ridge area and new development?
Don's Dave Romano. It's a good question. Hi, it's a good question, and we hadn't really thought about it. I'll just tell you, I'm trying to take vacation, so that means you're busy like every night, all night, right? So I've got another little neighborhood meeting on a project tomorrow that is kind of similarly constituted. We have like a park strip that we created that's about 40 feet wide between the new development and the old development, and the old development hates it because they're afraid people are going to be walking through there. So your question is kind of two-edged, right? Which is, if you have a neighbor immediately over your back fence, and can the homes be controlled, and can I maintain the line of sight? We'll look at that a little bit. But if we create a gap, that gives you a little bit of space, but does it create a situation where maybe people could get back there, be out of the side of public safety? What would that look like? How would it be maintained? And so I think the most that I could do today is kind of make sure that, Steve has heard that, Don has heard that, and as we're looking at what we're doing there, just consider that, that's another comment that's been made, and that we just think about, is that something that makes sense, or if not, why it doesn't make sense, and just know that we heard it. But I think the thought was it's more secure if you have one neighbor over your fence, not two or three in small lots, one neighbor over your fence. Than all the people internal to the park ridge have. You just happen to be on that outside edge, and so you've got a field, over the top of you. So we'll take a look at that and think about it.
Okay, no more hands or comments that I can see.
Fantastic. I just want to thank all of you for participating. New development is change, and change is always concerning, and I understand that there are many different opinions about it, but we appreciate you guys taking the time this evening, asking thoughtful and respectful questions. We'll do our best